Have you ever woken up late and had to sprint to school? Maybe you threw on a uniform, grabbed a half-eaten breakfast, and dashed out the door, hoping the bell hadn't rung yet. Sometimes we made it just in time. Other times we didn't and had to face the consequences. Cleaning the toilets, standing outside the classroom for the entire lesson. It was embarrassing back then, but now those memories feel strangely sweet, like growing pains we all survived. But what if those everyday memories, those innocent, hurried mornings, turned into a nightmare? What if, instead of being just another day of being late, it became the worst day of your life or your child's? This is the story of a tragedy that unfolded in a place that should have been safe, a place we trust, school. This is the case of Ryoko Ishida, a 15-year-old girl whose ordinary morning ended in a horrifying accident. It's known today as the Takatsuka Gate incident. As a content creator, travel is a regular part of my life, whether I'm filming on location, editing in a hotel room, or jumping on last-minute calls while I'm on the road. And one thing I've learned the hard way is that reliable data cannot be an afterthought. If I can't upload, navigate, or connect with my team, everything gets delayed. And that is why I started using Saily. Saily is an eSIM app that gives you instant mobile data in over 150 countries. No physical SIMs, no airport lines, just fast, affordable internet the moment you land. So on this trip to Vietnam, I opened the app, selected my destination, applied my code DARKASIA for 15% off, and was connected before I even left the terminal. I booked my ride, checked maps, messaged my team seamlessly. And once Saily is installed, you don't need to set up a new eSIM in each country. Just open the app, select the destination and plan, and go. And the best part is that it works alongside my regular SIM, so I still get OTPs, texts, and calls from Malaysia or Korea even while I'm abroad. So if you're a digital nomad like me, creator or freelancer, Saily takes the stress out of staying online. No more Wi-Fi hunts, no more SIM swaps. Just open the app and get to work. So download the Saily app, scan the QR code on screen, or head to the link below. And don't forget to use my code DARKASIA for 15% off. Trust me, once you try it, you will never go back to SIM cards again. It happened on July 6, 1990. That morning, Ryoko was rushed to Kobe University Hospital. The doctors did what they could, but she was pronounced dead at 10:25 a.m. Her family arrived at the hospital soon after, and what they saw didn't feel real. Their daughter, who had just gone to school that morning, now lay lifeless under a white sheet, with faint traces of blood still visible. The hospital staff told them she had suffered a severe brain injury. The cause, blunt force trauma to the head. The police were called, and when they got to the school, nothing looked out of the ordinary. Students were quietly taking exams. Classes were going on as usual. There were no signs of panic, no traces of blood, no sense that anything terrible had just happened. Since it was exam day, police had to wait until the tests were over to begin questioning. When they did, school officials insisted it had been an unfortunate accident, nothing more. But that story didn't hold for long, because the students knew what really happened. And when they spoke, they described a scene that no one could forget. They had seen their friend Ryoko Ishida crushed beneath the weight of a 230-kilogram metal gate. But before we get to that moment, let's take a step back. Who was Ryoko? There's not a lot of public information about her family or background, but what we do know is that she was a good student. She went to Kobe Takatsuka High School, which was one of only 5 designated research schools in Japan at the time. She was quiet, diligent, not the type to break rules or stand out in the wrong way. In fact, July 6th, the day she died, was the first time she had ever been late to school. It was the last day of final exams. Ryoko had overslept, so she left home in a rush, hoping to still make it in time. At her school, arriving late meant being locked out. The school had a rule. The front gate would close around 8:30 a.m., and 3 teachers were assigned to monitor it. Anyone who arrived after that was punished. That morning, like many others, 3 teachers were already at their posts. One of them stood near the train station, about 200 meters from the school gate, using a microphone to call out warnings. "Hurry up, don't be late." The teacher then returned to the school gate, put down his microphone, checked his watch, and called out, "I'm going to close the gate now." Some students later recalled that he even counted down from 5, which only added to the panic. But when asked in court, the teacher, Toshihiko Hosoi, denied that part. He said he didn't count down. He only shouted at the students to hurry because it was the final day of exams. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the school bell chimed across the campus. That was the signal. Hosoi stepped up to the sliding gate, a massive structure about 1.5 meters tall and weighing roughly 230 kilograms. He bent slightly and began to push the heavy gate from a low angle. Bit by bit, the speed of the gate increased. Once it gained enough momentum, he stopped pushing with his body and started using his hand to guide it. At that point, Hosoi said he was facing forward. When the gate closed, he claimed he didn't see any more students, just 2 who had made it inside at the last moment. But Ryoko was still outside. She and a friend had been running along the sidewalk about 200 meters away from the gate. They'd spotted another student ahead of them breaking into a run, so they followed. Just before reaching the school, the 2 girls paused briefly, trying to catch their breath. Then, when they heard the school chime ring, they started sprinting again. As they neared the gate, Ryoko surged ahead, leaving her friend behind and overtaking a group of students clustered in front of her. One boy, who was standing about half a meter to Ryoko's left, later described what he saw. Ryoko leaned forward just a few steps from the gate. She lowered her head and tucked in her body, trying to slip through a narrow gap in the crowd. The boy stopped himself, thinking it was too late, too risky to try and squeeze through. But Ryoko didn't stop. She kept going full speed. Hosoi, who claimed he hadn't seen anything in front of him, pushed the gate shut. And just like that, Ryoko was caught in the worst possible place. The gate slammed shut behind the crowd of students, crushing her. At that moment, Hosoi still hadn't realized what had happened. According to the prosecution, he mistook the commotion for something else. He thought one of the boys was pushing on the gate, trying to sneak in late. In response, he stepped forward and pulled the gate open again, ready to scold the student. But what he saw stopped him cold. There, caught in the gate, was Ryoko, her head crushed, her body motionless. One of the witnesses was Ryoko's friend, the girl who had been running beside her. She remembered that just before reaching the gate, the 2 of them had split up. Ryoko went one way, she went the other, as they tried to get past the other students. Some witnesses said Ryoko tried to loop around the right side of the crowd to slip in. But she didn't make it. The injury was catastrophic. Ryoko suffered a devastating skull fracture when her head was caught between the gate and the post. She was still alive when they found her, but barely. There were rumors that Hosoi left her at the gate and returned to his exam duties, but in court, he denied this. He claimed he stayed to help, saying that at one point he was still there, confused, even struck in the head by a member of the school's baseball team during the chaos. Eventually, Ryoko was rushed to the Kobe University Hospital, but it was too late. At 10:25 a.m., Ryoko Ishida was pronounced dead. So who exactly was Toshihiko Hosoi? At the time of the incident, he was a 39-year-old teacher, an ordinary man on the surface just doing his job. Hosoi was born in 1951 in Izuchi-cho, located in the Izuchi district of Hyogo Prefecture. He had been teaching for about 15 years by then. His career began around 1976, and Kobe Takasuka High School was already his 3rd school. He taught Japanese history, and at the time of Ryoko's death, he was serving as the deputy chief for the 3rd-year students, a role that placed him at the center of moral guidance for the graduating class. On top of that, he was also the manager of the school's baseball team. But Hosoi's past wasn't spotless. Before coming to Kobe Takatsuka, he'd been involved in an incident at his previous school, Hyogo Prefectural Shoyo High School, where he reportedly assaulted a member of the baseball club. The student was injured, and Hosoi ended up being fined around 50,000 yen. People who knew Hosoi and those who later read about him described him as a serious, rule-abiding teacher, the kind who seemed to value discipline and order above anything else. Maybe that's why he was chosen to be in charge of the school gate that day, someone who wouldn't hesitate to enforce the rules. Now, let's return to the day of the incident. When the police arrived at the school, nothing seemed out of place. The gate was spotless, no blood, no visible signs that anything tragic had just occurred. This raised suspicions immediately. Investigators began to wonder if the school staff had deliberately cleaned the scene to cover something up. Meanwhile, the students, many of whom had witnessed Ryoko being crushed, were asking about her, and Hosoi reportedly told them she was seriously injured, but it's not life-threatening. This meant Hosoi was either trying to downplay the severity of the incident or didn't fully grasp how serious it was at the time. But it was. Ryoko had already been rushed to the hospital, where she died. As news of the case spread, the Japanese media followed the story closely, day after day, highlighting the school's suspicious actions and their apparent attempts to downplay or even hide what had happened. At the time, Kobe Takatsuka High School was a newly established institution, and its academic ranking was low. In Japan, where school reputation is closely tied to academic performance and university admissions, low-ranking schools often struggle to attract top students and maintain public trust. To compensate for this, some lower-ranked schools leaned heavily into management education, using strict discipline and control to present an image of order, moral excellence, and structure. The idea was, even if our grades aren't the best, our students are well-behaved and respectful. By doing this, the school hoped to gain credibility with parents, the local education board, and the wider community. But this overcorrection led to problems. Instead of fostering growth, schools like Takatsuka created environments of fear, where harsh rules became the school's identity. Critics, journalists, celebrities, educators began speaking out. They argued that management education wasn't just strict, it was oppressive, that it robbed students of their freedom and dignity, that it prioritized obedience over safety. And slowly a movement began to take shape, a movement that challenged the very foundation of how some schools operated. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the school's response was swift, but not in the way people hoped. Rather than taking collective responsibility, the school placed nearly all the blame on one person, Toshihiko Hosoi, the teacher who had closed the gate. The two other teachers who were stationed nearby that morning, their names were never revealed, and they faced no consequences. When the case eventually went to the criminal trial, the court did find Hosoi negligent, but said nothing about the school's role in the incident, or about the larger debate surrounding their so-called management education policy. Outside the courtroom, however, the media wasn't so quiet. Journalists were openly critical, and what made things worse were the school's actions after Ryoko's death, actions that many interpreted as attempts to cover up the truth. For one, the school washed away the bloodstains from the scene before police had a chance to examine it. Then, the school attempted to remove the damaged gate, an action widely seen as trying to erase the physical evidence. On July 20th, less than 2 weeks after the tragedy, the school held a general parent-teacher meeting to address growing concerns. The media swarmed the area, eager to report on what was being said inside those walls. Some positioned microphones near windows or vents, hoping to pick up voices from inside. Others pressed their ears against the door itself or placed small concealed recorders along the wall, just outside the meeting room. A few even attempted to relay live audio via tiny radio transmitters. But the school had anticipated that. They played loud music throughout the entire meeting, drowning out any chance of capturing what was actually being discussed inside. Despite these efforts, a cassette recording of the meeting was made, likely by someone in the PTA. At the beginning of that tape, a Hyogo prefectural official scolded the parents, claiming that the PTA was never meant to be a platform for information to reach outsiders. He warned that if any of the meeting's content were leaked to the media, it could lead to widespread rumors, misunderstandings, and trouble for the students. The school refused to release the tape publicly, arguing that it wasn't subject to disclosure under Japan's public documents law. They also claimed there were no transcripts or meeting minutes available. Eventually, the school destroyed their copy of the recording, but the PTA had kept one. 8 years later, the audio from that meeting was finally released. Then, on July 21st, investigators with the Hyogo Prefectural Police conducted a reenactment of the accident. Ryoko had been wearing a helmet that morning, but it had been completely crushed by the force of the sliding gate. Her injuries were so severe, the helmet offered no protection. Investigators concluded that Hosoi had acted recklessly. He'd closed the gate with force, even as students were still arriving in groups. In a separate investigation, it came to light that Hosoi had once caught a student's skirt in the gate during a previous incident, raising further concerns about whether he had ever been properly trained in handling it safely. Eventually, Hosoi was charged with manslaughter in the course of his duties and sent to the Kobe District Prosecutor's Office. During his trial, Hosoi defended himself by saying the responsibility didn't lie solely with him. He insisted that the gate duty was shared among 3 teachers, and that the method he used to close it was, in his view, safe and reasonable. He claimed that the school had given him no specific safety training and that no warnings were issued about what to do or not do. He argued that it was impossible to predict that a student would sprint headfirst into a narrow gap by the gatepost. Then he turned the blame toward the system. He told the court that if anyone should be held accountable, it was the school, the Hyogo Prefectural Board of Education, the Ministry of Education. All of them had embraced and enforced a flawed educational philosophy, one that pushed teachers to discipline students at all costs, but gave them no guidance on how to do it safely. Still on July 26, just 20 days after the tragedy, the Hyogo Prefectural Board of Education moved forward with disciplinary action. Hosoi was dismissed from his position. The board also issued a formal reprimand to the school principal and admonished the vice principal and the superintendent. 2 deputy superintendents were placed under strict caution. But no action was taken against the teachers who gave the order to close the gate. And just like that, the principal's resignation was accepted the same day. Later, Hosoi filed a petition challenging his dismissal. In September of that same year, a new principal was appointed by the Board of Education. One of their first decisions was to cancel all future parent-teacher meetings, including any further explanations about the incident. In April 1992, just before his sentencing, Hosoi published a personal essay in Bungei Shunju titled 700 Days of Obedience and Remorse. In it, he described the emotional burden he had carried and criticized what he saw as distorted portrayals of him in the media. But on February 10, 1993, the Kobe District Court issued its ruling. The court found that closing the school gate wasn't just a one-time decision, it was a routine procedure. And given the gate's weight and structure, closing it without proper caution was dangerous and potentially lethal. In their view, teachers should have reasonably predicted that students might try to dash in at the last moment. The court emphasized that there had been no safety coordination among teachers that day, a clear sign of negligence. The judge largely accepted the prosecution's case and sentenced Hosoi to 1 year in prison, suspended for 3 years. Hosoi didn't agree with the ruling, but ultimately decided not to appeal. He said the emotional toll it had taken on his family was too great, and with that, the verdict stood. As a result of his conviction, Hosoi's teaching license was revoked under the Educational Staff Licensing Act. The following April, he released a full book under his real name. In it, he reflected on how he had carried out his duties like a police officer guarding the school gate, without question, without training. He believed it was his job, his duty, his version of justice. He admitted there was some regret, some recognition that the system had forced him into his role. But he still maintained that he shouldn't have been charged with manslaughter, that the media scrutiny, the public shaming, it had gone too far. Years later, his book sparked renewed criticism. Many believed he never fully took responsibility, but even in his memoir, he continued to defend the police-style gate monitoring system as if it were justified. And while Hosoi's trial played out, the school remained under fire. As mentioned before, right after the incident, they tried to quietly remove the very gate that had killed Ryoko, an act many saw as an attempt to erase the evidence. Parents and local residents protested, and the court stepped in, ruling that removing the gate before the case was resolved would be inappropriate. But after Hosoi's conviction was finalized, the school went ahead. On July 30th, 1993, they dismantled the original steel gate and installed a smaller, lighter one. The announcement came during a press conference, but parents and the PTA hadn't even been informed beforehand. This angered many local residents because they believed the school had used public money to silence the memory of what happened. So they demanded that the school reimburse the construction costs, a symbolic push for accountability. The case reached the Supreme Court's third chamber, but in the end, their request was dismissed. Outside of the lawsuit over the gate itself, Ryoko's parents had also filed a separate case, holding the school responsible for the tragic consequences of its rules and its staff's negligence. Public opinion was divided, but many sided with the family. They questioned how the school could have enforced such strict discipline without considering basic safety. Former students began sharing their own stories, how they had to abandon their backpacks just to make it inside the gate in time. Some girls recalled how their skirts got caught while trying to squeeze through the same gap Ryoko had tried to pass. In the end, Takatsuka High School was ordered to pay 60 million yen to Ryoko's family. But is that enough? Can a sum of money ever make up for the loss of a bright, innocent girl, someone failed by the very people meant to protect her? Ryoko's death raised a deeper question, one that strikes at the heart of how some Japanese schools operated for decades. Should safety and individuality ever take a backseat to blind obedience? In many Western countries, school rules are meant to guide, not control. But in Japan, especially in the 1980s and 90s, schools were often seen as places of discipline. Uniformity, silence, and obedience were treated as virtues. Even being a minute late could lead to punishment. That was the world Ryoko lived in, where lateness wasn't just inconvenient, it was shameful, where teachers enforced order like guards, and where strictness was seen as moral strength. Over the years, the debate sparked by Ryoko's death helped shine a light on the widespread issue of black school rules, a term in Japan referring to outdated, unnecessary, and sometimes oppressive school policies. These included mandatory black hair for all students, even for students who are naturally blonde or brown. Rules that restricted the color of girls' underwear, usually requiring girls to wear only white or beige undergarments, enforced through visual inspections during gym class or uniform checks. Even bans on ponytails out of fear they might excite boys. What started as a tragic incident at one school became a wake-up call for the nation. In Tokyo, nearly 200 public schools eventually scrapped all these rules. By 2025, over 170 schools in eastern Japan had revised their dress codes and introduced gender-neutral uniforms, moving away from policies designed to shame or control students. Ryoko's legacy lives on in those changes, a continuing effort to build schools that are safer, fairer, and more compassionate. So what does this case say about the balance between discipline and safety? When do rules stop helping students and start harming them? And how much responsibility should a school or a system bear when something goes wrong? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and that is all for today. Thanks for watching.